Welcome back to our next adventure. During the last few days of May, a group of us decided to head into the North Maine Woods for a remote and adventure-filled 3 days of off-grid camping. The northwest part of Maine is a total of 3.5 million privately owned acres of wilderness, primarily managed for timber harvesting. That's about the size of Connecticut, an area without power lines, road signage, pavement, cell towers, or any other modern sign of human existence. This video will go over activities that we did, were kid tested and approved, and also a general first-timers impression of the region.
We got in at 6:30 last night. Our primary site, which was on 5th St. John Pond, was taken by people from Massachusetts, which was up this river. The road to get there was a mile long and four-wheeling mud puddles, pinstriped. Anyway, we went 10 miles to our secondary site, which was inaccessible. And then we came back here. So that was a 2-hour adventure. And we pulled in at 9 o'clock, finished setting up by 10:30, and went to bed just before 11. Sun up at 4:30. This is our tertiary camping spot picked out. So our backup.
On the first morning, we woke up and unloaded the canoe gear before we drove to a remote mountain pond. And on the way, we looked for wildlife.
There they go. Those are like days old.
Days, literally days.
You're gonna want to allow yourself plenty of transport time because you'll want to drive slow and soak in the scenery and avoid the shale. We only needed to carry in our paddles and fishing gear to the pond because there were already canoes available at the access point, which is pretty common in the area. We fished for perch and brook trout and chubs, and one trout was later eaten on the fire. The St. John River has muskie in it, including the 5 ponds at the headwater, which requires heavier tackle than most of the other fishing gear. Kids spent a ton of time fishing, and I untangled. After dinner, on the first night, we all piled into the biggest truck we had and went on the first moose ride. 11 of us all packed into this one pickup truck, thanks to Derek. We ended up finding moose within about a half mile from the camp. About an hour before sunset, the moose will come out to the fields and the roads to eat and move around. And the end of May and early June is when the North Maine Woods turns over with new life, trees bloom, and animals give birth, bugs hatch, and the region just comes alive. We were lucky to see multiple sets of mothers with newly dropped calves, and there were also a lot of solo juveniles out exploring by themselves. This one was interested in watching us from a distance drive down the road, but wanted to keep away in the front of us. Finally, it had enough and dipped into the woods. We saw 7 that first moose ride. And make sure you bring extra gas and tanks and extraction equipment. There are a lot of washouts on the secondary roads especially, and you'll be surprised how many miles you put on when you're exploring. As soon as you find one moose, you want to drive another 5 miles, see another, and see another, and the miles add up. See you later, moose. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Oh, hey guys. The next day, we got back in the canoes and pulled them upriver for over a mile until we hit the 5th St. John Pond. The river was too shallow to paddle in most places, so we waded and pulled them up and gave the kids a free ride.
I caught a fish! I caught a fish!
Yes.
Good job,
Look at me.
Is it big enough to eat?
No. Smile.
I got my knife.
At the outlet, there was remains of an old dam. There were perch holes on either side of the rocks that kept the kids super busy with action. And thanks to the relaxed fishing laws of the particular waterway, we went through an absolute pile of worms. We had lunch on the shore before we eventually headed back to camp. And kids fished even more when we got back while we cooked dinner. Something I was surprised about is how many leeches there are. As soon as you stop moving 1 minute, you're gonna get some on your toes. So just be careful and bring the appropriate medical kit.
What happened?
They naturally prevent clotting, which can bleed quite a bit. Now, we didn't rough it 100% of the time, but the torch doesn't take up any space and it makes a bonfire in about 15 seconds, which is good for the kids. After cleanup, we went on a second moose ride, and it was even more productive than the first night.
Oh, that's a big one.
That's a bull.
That's a bull.
It's gotta be. Is it a bull?
It's a bull. It's huge.
It's huge.
Oh yeah, it's got antlers. It's got antlers.
Yes, it's a bull.
It has antlers.
It's a bull.
We saw another 9 that night, a total of 20.
It's a black bear.
Wildlife was everywhere. After the kids went to bed, we stayed up and watched the stars for a while. No light pollution, no obstacles. It's almost like you're physically closer to space when you're up there. The next morning we packed up after breakfast, photographs to memorialize our spot, and then we were off. The roads get graded in early June, which is a catch-22 because there's less potholes, which lets you travel faster, but there's more raw shale just sitting on top of the roads, which have razor sharp edges that tear open normal tires. So have spares and have a jack ready. Taking into account the 7-hour trip, just allow yourself some time for snacks, the views, any wildlife, waterways and crossings. This young juvenile right here, let us watch him for quite a few minutes before finally giving up and jaunting off. His goofy trot, knees all bent weird. See you later, Moose. If you come out through the southern end of the North Maine Woods, you'll hit a town of Cocadjo. Not sure how to say it, but it has one camp store and the famous roach pond and river, popular for 5 fishing. These guys caught a good laker.
Yeah! Woohoo! Good one.
This was a bucket list trip for me, made better by bringing these two. I love them. Thanks for coming along. Now go get outside.